Hello. Thank you all for joining us today for our web conference, Managing Supplier Capacity Proactively, a key pillar of any complete supply chain risk management strategy. It's sponsored by Resolink and hosted by Supply and Demand Chain Executive. I'm Barry Hochfelder, editor of Supply and Demand Chain Executive magazine. Our mission is to provide intelligence and decision-making information for executives and management professionals as they enable their supply and demand chains for competitive advantage. It's our pleasure as part of that mission to present today's conference. Before we get going, let me give you a brief overview of what you should expect to see. Slides will be appearing in your screen console accompanied by live audio from our presenters. Those slides will update as they move through the presentation, just like a typical PowerPoint. Also, you can use the F5 key to refresh your presentation viewer if necessary. Now, we want this to be an interactive forum, and we've reserved time at the end of the presentation for a Q&A. You can submit any questions you might have during the conference by using the question box area on your screen, and we'll try to answer as many as possible. We have a large number of attendees, and many questions came in during the registration process, so we may not be able to answer all of them today. The remainder will be answered by email following the event. Please note we'll have an archived version of this seminar posted on our website, www.sdcexec.com, about 24 hours from now. Okay, supplier capacity risk is a key factor supply chain managers need to evaluate to ensure their uninterrupted flow of parts and products that are necessary to service their customer demand. A lack of visibility of supplier capacity constraints can directly lead to lost revenue and market share and declines in customer satisfaction and shareholder value. Our speakers today, Sumit Vakil and Wayne Kakamo of Resolink, will describe the business challenges and benefits of taking a proactive approach to ensuring that you have the necessary supplier capacity at a part level to meet fluctuating demand forecasts. Some of the things you'll learn include how best to define and measure supplier capacity risk, the key challenges in managing supplier capacity risk, the key business benefits and expected ROI, best practices from leading supplier capacity management practitioners, and more. So now, time to learn. So I'll turn this over to Wayne Kakamo. Wayne?
Thanks a lot, Barry. As Barry just said, my name is Wayne Kakamo, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Resolink. And it's my pleasure to introduce the main speaker today, Sumit Vakil, who is the Chief Technology Officer at Resolink. Sumit has over 20 years of experience bringing innovative supply chain and networking technologies to the market. He served in product management and engineering roles at successful startups such as Aerospace, Internet Devices, and VPNnet. That's in addition to his product leadership roles at Fortune 500 companies such as Brocade, Cisco, and 3Com. Prior to his role at Resolink, Sumit was the Director of Product Management at Brocade. He is the holder of several patents and has an MBA from the Wharton School of Business and an MS in Electrical Engineering from Purdue University. Sumit was appointed a Senior Research Fellow to the Supply Chain Management Center in the Smith School of Business at the University of Maryland. Sumit, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Wayne. Hello, everyone, and thanks for the opportunity to speak with you today about proactive capacity risk management. In the presentation today, we will cover a fair amount of ground, so I'll try and go relatively fast. We will start with defining capacity management, then go into key challenges, best practices, and then look at a sample comprehensive supply chain risk management strategy. We will end with a brief system overview. Okay, so let's start with the definitions. Simply defined, capacity is how many parts or how much material a supplier can produce in a day, a week, month, year, taking into account their shift structures, their holiday schedules, and so on. Capacity management is the set of processes that your suppliers would implement to ensure that they can meet your demands. And a capacity management solution is something for you. As a customer, it helps you develop visibility into your supplier's capacity-related processes, get an understanding of risks related to the supplier's ability to meet demand, proactively mitigate such risks, and react to unforeseen disruptions. What kind of companies need capacity management capabilities? Pretty much any company that has a diverse, complex supply chain behind it. It does not matter how big the company is or what industry they play in. Typically, we see that the need is most severe for companies with some of or all of the following challenges. They have large global supply chains. They have big or unexpected demand changes. We've all heard of examples of how a new product came out, it went viral, and all of a sudden the demand far exceeded supply, resulting in lost revenues. Supply chains that are exposed to unpredictable disruptions such as natural disasters, geopolitical events, etc., also see a need for this kind of a solution. Companies that operate in heavily regulated industries where changing suppliers is a lengthy, expensive process also see value here. The pharmaceutical and food industries are great examples. In the United States, for instance, they're required to have several filings with the FDA whenever any change occurs with a supplier. Companies that have very short product life cycles can also benefit from capacity management solutions. Some of the examples here are consumer space companies, apparel companies, etc. And finally, there is that segment of the industry where the supplier base contracts or expands according to economic cycles. So let's take an example. During the Great Recession, the automotive industry saw a prolonged drop in demand. When that happened, they obviously cut back on what they were purchasing from their suppliers. And because this was a prolonged downturn, the suppliers made changes. The suppliers reacted by taking long-term steps to shed capacity. They laid off skilled labor, they sold off factories, they mothballed plants, etc. When the economy picked up and the demand for automobiles increased, the supply base was just not capable of responding as rapidly to bring the required capacity back online. If you're in such a situation, you can derive significant benefits by implementing a robust capacity management practice. With deep capacity-related visibility available in advance, you can put strategy in place to address extreme demand upswings, react faster than your competitors in addressing sudden supply chain disruptions, lock down capacity from unreliable or regulated sources, and ensure that adequate material is available so you can fully exploit that market window that's available to you, that short window with fast-moving, short lifecycle products. That translates into maximizing revenue, market share, and customer satisfaction. It also enables you to minimize costs. If you knew that a supplier was capacity constrained, then instead of increasing your raw material inventory, WIP, or finished goods inventory, you could qualify an alternate source that could meet your upside demand. All of these together ultimately help you maximize your shareholder value.
Sumit, it sounds like one of the key benefits of a solution like this is that you can really sell this as managing positive risk and not just negative things that are happening. So in terms of protecting revenue, positive demand fluctuations as opposed to negative. Is that something that you would agree with?
Certainly, that's absolutely the case, Wayne. And increasingly what we are seeing is that customers and supply chain organizations are very passionate about the top line. Typically when supply chain organizations have been graded, they've been graded on cost. But again, we're seeing this trend change. Supply chains are being recognized for making an impact to the top line, helping with the market share and customer satisfaction. Given how critical a robust supply chain management practice can be to your organization, it is important to understand some of the key challenges you could face in trying to develop such a practice. The four major ones we have seen in our experience are as follows. One, securing the right resources and talent to develop the necessary processes, that will help you collect the risk-related intelligence from your suppliers and maintain it keep it refreshed on an ongoing basis. 2, creating or fostering a level of trust with your suppliers so they are willing to share details related to their process and part level capacity with you. 3, developing rich analytics with workflow capabilities that draw out key capacity related risk and concerns and connect them to impact to your revenue, and a comprehensive monitoring and alert system. And finally, 4, creating a unified solution which brings in supply chain risk management, capacity risk management, and supplier business continuity process management together in one solution. The benefit, obviously, of such a solution is that you can leverage the same processes, tools, data, and investments, and certainly people across these 3 key areas. We have some recommendations on how to deal with these key challenges. So let's start with the resource and expertise challenge. Our recommendation is to look at leveraging commercial tools and services to develop and administer capacity risk surveys. Third parties specializing in supply chain risk management and capacity risk solutions have the cross-industry experience to help you develop a very robust and comprehensive process. Talking about gaining supplier trust, this is of course something that's going to require a multi-pronged approach. It will include policies that you probably already have in place, such as preferred supplier status, supplier awards, and so on. But you also need to think about how you can help them by minimizing their work when they have to provide this kind of information. An approach that works really well is to make available to them a platform where they can input information once but share it multiple times. What we have seen is that the cost savings they achieve by having such efficiency really motivates them to participate. To address the challenge of analytics and event monitoring, look to some of the new cloud-based offerings that provide rich, insightful analytics and workflows, and global multi-language social media-enabled event monitoring. Finally, you want to consider putting special emphasis on implementing a practice that takes a unified approach to supply chain risk management, capacity management, and supply business continuity risk management. That will absolutely help you maximize investment. Now let's take a look at what an integrated approach to capacity management and supply chain risk management looks like that addresses the challenges that we discussed earlier. Let's start with the core, which is supply chain risk management. It helps you map out your supply chain, identify the key risk areas, understand their impact to your revenue, and then helps you develop strategies to mitigate those risks. It also provides for global monitoring of events that could disrupt your supply chain. The added benefit is that the core helps you put in place a supplier network that you can subsequently leverage to collect additional information. Moreover, it helps you put tools and people and processes in place that can be extended to include complementary capabilities such as capacity risk and supplier business continuity risk management. Next, then you can layer on capacity and BCP solutions. Now this becomes a relatively simpler exercise because you can take advantage of the common platform, the data repository, the processes, the people you have put in place, and certainly the relationships you have developed with the suppliers. In terms of the data repository, your products, your list of approved vendors, your manufacturer part numbers are all already in place, and they can all be reused. Your suppliers are also already onboarded and trained and familiar with the system, and so the friction in getting them to participate in additional data sharing is significantly reduced. Finally, you can further leverage the core and add-on core to add on adjacent initiatives such as compliance, corporate social responsibility, security, and so on. These may have different business owners, but you should still be able to leverage much of the same information and data collected for the core and capacity risk.
So, Samir, would it be safe to say that compliance and the corporate social responsibility and security initiatives maybe have a different owner, but we should be talking to capacity, risk, and BCP owners? Should essentially all those functions should be somewhat centralized and owned by the same sort of Uber process manager, if you will?
That would certainly be a best practice that we would recommend. It helps with the continuity. It helps with having a central point who's managing risk-related communication with your suppliers, who's also coordinating risk-related disruptions and such. However, we have seen some customers who will have a separate owner or a sub-owner, if you may, for capacity risk. But generally, what we have seen is the supply chain risk and BCP are always under the same owner.
Okay.
Now let's consider an example of a strategy that integrates the big three to ensure the supply continuity. And we're talking about a platform that or a solution that integrates supply chain risk management, capacity, and business continuity for suppliers. So let's consider the example of supplier A. Okay. With risk management, you will be able to build a comprehensive risk profile for the supplier and the parts that it provides. It enables you to create a proactive risk mitigation strategy, such as that could include a number of different things. Some examples are qualifying alternate sources, not using parts from that supplier in new products, qualifying alternate sites from the same supplier, and so on. You will also have tools and the data required to develop the core of your supply chain disruption response plan. With insight into when you add insight into the supplier's business continuity practices to the mix, you can further fine-tune your mitigation strategy and disruption response plan. You can, for example, work with supplier A to bring their BCP up to spec or in line with your expectations. And you can work with them to put practices, processes, maybe even equipment in place to help them reduce their downtime should a disruption actually happen. Adding capacity risk information into the mix provides an additional actionable intelligence that you can use to develop viable alternate sources. You would qualify these alternate sources with the capacity. You would qualify alternate sources that have the capacity to meet your demand should supplier A have a disruption and is not able to recover fast enough. When taken together, the three provide a strong degree of protection against possible disruptions to supplier A's operations. Okay. Let me quickly summarize what we have gone over so far. We have so far discussed the benefits of capacity management, key challenges that you may face in bringing up a capacity management practice, and the power of integrating the big three: supply chain risk management, capacity management, and supplier business continuity risk. As you probably realize by now, automation will play a key role in creating a scalable, reliable, comprehensive risk management practice. In the next few slides, I will talk about what to look for in just such a solution. Let's look at some of the key requirements that you should consider in an integrated system. So analytics absolutely are one of the most critical aspects of the system. Any system must be able to provide you actionable insights into supply chain risk, capacity risk, business continuity risk, so that you can formulate strategies to mitigate them. The key word here is actionable. You want the solution to do the work for you, to crunch the numbers for you, so that your team can focus not on doing VLOOKUPs and drawing charts, but on implementing the strategies to reduce risk. And you want your team focused on value-added work, not doing spreadsheet manipulation. An accurate, up-to-date supplier information repository is also critical. It centralizes your supplier information in one location. It makes it possible to leverage the same information across multiple different initiatives such as risk capacity and business continuity. It also enables that input once, share multiple times model that suppliers prefer. Obviously because it reduces their effort, and it also helps you maintain and improve relations with your supplier. Proactive risk mitigation algorithms help you cut through mountains of data that you commonly see in supply chain by automatically identifying and prioritizing the highest risk, most capacity constrained products, parts, suppliers, etc. This information lets you make judicious use of your budget, your people, and your resources to proactively address the most impactful items first. The incident response and recovery systems provide for rapid response to disruptions. When a disruption happens, it helps you to quickly identify and act on the most critical items first. I cannot stress enough the importance of this. When you're in a crisis response mode, the last thing you want your team to be doing is scrambling, gathering data, running analytics, trying to figure out exactly what happened. What you want is to have that information at your fingertips so you can start executing your disaster recovery plan and focus on just that. A difference of just a few hours could make all the difference between you cornering the supply versus your competitors doing it. Finally, enabling services. The solution that you consider must include services to collect, curate, and update supplier information. Onboarding suppliers, training them, and administering surveys creates a massive amount of work that can be very disruptive and distracting to your internal team. Rather than have them focus on this, consider solutions that include these services along with software automation. It frees up your employees to once again focus on what's key, the value-added work of mitigating risk. Also look for enabling services that include global 24/7 event monitoring services. The best systems monitor events worldwide in multiple languages. They also monitor social media, whereas we all know a lot of the breaking events are reported first. Now I'm going to spend some time talking about how Resilink's solution looks like for a comprehensive approach to supply chain risk mitigation automation. We have a platform for risk, capacity, supplier business continuity, and adjacent functionality on an integrated cloud-based solution. The platform, as of this presentation, supports a network of over 40,000 suppliers worldwide. Built on top of this supplier network is a supplier information repository that brings together data about supplier risk, capacity management, business continuity, planning, and adjacent functions. The information repository has been built up through our enabling data services. So it's the Resilink staff that goes out to suppliers and collects the data, cleans up the data, loads the data, keeps it updated, etc. Our proprietary algorithms power our proactive risk mitigation planning module. This extracts business intelligence from a combination of your data and the data we collect from suppliers. The incident response and recovery system is driven by our EventWatch service that provides 24/7 global coverage for supply chain disrupting events. Bringing all of this together is our analytics dashboard, which presents actionable information in an easy-to-use form with a suite of interactive charts and tables. Because the same platform supports the big three of supply chain risk mitigation, users can access all the modules, analytics, and intelligence in one place. There is no need to log into one system, then log into another system, extract data from multiple places, put everything in a spreadsheet, and then create your own analytics. Now let's take a deeper look at the system workflow that we employ for capacity management. So we start by collecting some information from you, the customer. That includes your approved vendor list, your manufacturer part numbers, bill of materials, products, and a 52-week forecast at the product level or your internal part number level. Our system uses your approved vendor list to reach out to your suppliers and collect capacity-related information from your suppliers. Our system also converts your forecast to a manufacturer part number level forecast. Then it takes your manufacturer part number level forecast and compares it against the capacity information that we have collected from the supplier. Should there be a mismatch, either immediate or in the future, the system generates a notification which lets you know ahead of time that there is a potential mismatch between supply and demand in the future. Because of the data that we collect from suppliers around capacity management, we're also able to quantify capacity risk in the form of a score on a scale of 1 to 10. The risk score then becomes a part of the comprehensive risk profile that our system creates about your supplier and the supplier parts that you buy from them. Digging a little deeper, here is a quick overview, a summary of the kind of information we collect from your suppliers. We start with the company level information about who is providing the information about capacity management, what their role is at the company, and contact information. This is followed by a detailed questionnaire about the supplier's capacity management processes, such as does the supplier have a written process to manage capacity? Has the process been reviewed? How often does it get reviewed? Has it been approved by management, etc.? The questionnaire also asks questions related to the supplier's capacity growth process. For example, it will ask, what is the main constraint that the supplier has in increasing capacity? The typical responses include things like, it takes us too long to train people, or there are regulatory hurdles in bringing up new manufacturing, or the cost to real estate is too high, etc. It also asks how the supplier manages its own capacity issues related to their suppliers. So the supplier is asked questions on how it gathers information from its suppliers about capacity-related issues. And then the capacity questionnaire has an entire section dedicated to collecting part number level information. This is where we collect details about the exact capacity available for that part, shift structures, and the ability for the supplier to be able to fulfill demand 3, 6, 12 months out into the future. Now let's go on to take a look at a small subset of this solution's functionality and how it looks like in the Resolink solution. This screen here shows you the report that gives you insight into how the data collection is proceeding. Since the supplier-provided data is such a critical component to the solution, it is important for you, the customer, to have visibility into the status of the data collection process. These set of drill-down charts and tables give you the required information that you can then use to identify suppliers who are slow to respond, who are not participating, etc. And then you can escalate with them. You can work closely with them. Take other action as required. You can also use the same analytics to identify suppliers that have responded favorably and in a timely manner should you wish to recognize their efforts. Once the data is collected, then this is where we get into all the actionable analytics. The first thing to look at is a report that shows you, that gives you an overview of how mature your partner's capacity management practices are. This combination of pie chart and LED tables is something that you see very commonly used in our system. The pie chart helps you prioritize work across high, medium, low risk suppliers, and the accompanying table provides additional granularity into what drives risk with those suppliers. By using the table, you can further prioritize the most critical mitigations based on what is more important to your organization. For example, if the supplier not having documented capacity management practices is your key care about, then you can filter the table on that column, and now you'll get a list of suppliers without a written policy, without a written process, and then you can work with them to resolve the issue. Then we have a set of analytics that help you understand and quantify part level capacity. This set of analytics is similar to the previous one, but at a part number level. The combination of the pie chart and the table again give you an at-a-glance report on the part level capacity risk. The pie chart, as before, also gives you a way to quickly drill down into what your high, medium, low risk parts are. And the accompanying table gives you finer grain information about what is the cause of that level of risk in that particular part. And then again, you can sort filter the table to quickly narrow down the parts based on your key care abouts. For example, if you're most concerned about the supplier meeting your upside 3 months out, then you can filter the table by that column, and now you know which parts are likely to have a supply-demand mismatch in 3 months. Going on to the next set of analytics, this actually gives you the exact details on when a particular part is going to have a mismatch between your supply and demand. With an early insight into capacity issues, you can plan ahead of time and avoid or minimize the impact to your manufacturing. This, of course, doesn't just include manufacturing disruption, but also could include high costs in trying to procure additional supply at the last minute. If you recollect, I had mentioned earlier that we collect information from you about your products, your bill of materials, your internal part numbers, your manufacturing part numbers, etc. Our software actually connects all that together. So while we are collecting capacity information at the supplier and manufacturer part number level, you can all of that information gets rolled up, so now you get an understanding of the risk at your product level as well. So you can quickly see the impact on your revenue from capacity constrained parts. And here as well, the analytics are set up to help you quickly focus on what is your most important care about. For example, you might want to first focus on your key strategic products. Another company might want to focus first on the highest revenue products, and so on. The last screenshot I wanted to share with you is this visual at a part number level that very quickly helps you identify where you're going to have a capacity mismatch or where you're going to have supply issues. So again, you know what time frame you're going to have to put your mitigation strategies in place.
Okay, great. Thanks, Sumit. I think we're going to move into the Q&A session at this point in time. So please go ahead and submit your questions, and we'll try to answer as many of them as we can. I do want to mention that we originally did intend to do a live demo, but we learned a little bit later that the technology didn't permit us to do that over this web conferencing tool. So if anybody is interested in seeing a live demo, give us a call. We'll set one up for you. Okay, so let me just launch into the Q&A at this point in time. Again, please, at this time, submit your questions. First question is in two parts, Sumit. Says, I have two questions pertaining to the early warning system. First part is, what information will be provided within the early warning system?
Specifically with regards to capacity risk, the information that goes out in the early warning system is which parts are impacted, which products are impacted, who is the supplier that's providing those parts, what is the revenue impact, and when is the disruption going to happen. So it could be that in 6 months, let's say over Thanksgiving, your demand is going to exceed the capacity your supplier has.
Okay, here's the second part of the question. What information is used to notify me of a supply or demand issue?
There are two sets of data that are required to create this the capacity management system. And so one set of data comes from you that would include your products, your bill of materials, approved vendor list, manufacturer part numbers. And then the other set is the capacity risk information that comes from your suppliers. These two are combined and used to generate the notifications.
Okay. How frequently can I change my demand information?
Typically, we are seeing customers change their demand information on a monthly basis, but it can be done more frequently.
Okay. Is the supply and demand information captured at a daily, weekly, monthly level? Which is it?
We capture the demand information at a weekly level, going out 52 weeks.
Okay. And how frequently is information gathered from suppliers?
Typically, our customers are looking at gathering information at 6-month or 1-year intervals. We also have some customers looking at gathering information on a quarterly basis.
Okay. How does your algorithm come up with supplier behavior in crisis situation where the supplier supplies to multiple customers?
Our system is built in such a way that we're very careful about protecting information that we have received from customers and from suppliers. Specifically with regards to capacity risk, the contracts between the customers and the suppliers would really dictate what capacity is available to the customers. So the information that we collect from suppliers, specifically around part risk, part capacity, is specific to customers. So information collected for one customer does not get shared with another.
Okay. Does the Resolink solution integrate with an ERP or daily production management system?
Certainly, that is something that is that we are capable of doing, that our system supports. However, the point to be made here is that Resolink's capacity risk solution is a strategic tool to understand capacity management processes at the supplier and to track supplier capacity thresholds, rather than making daily tactical decisions using the software.
Okay, here's another one. If multiple parts utilize the same available capacity, does the tool take the other part's demand into consideration when looking at a single part number risk?
The short answer is yes. If multiple parts are using the same available capacity, the software does account for that. The way the survey is structured, the questions that are asked to the supplier actually talk about or collect information about what other parts are being manufactured on the same line, and so how is the capacity shared between parts is included in the survey.
Okay. How does the capacity management module fit in? Well, I think let's reiterate this. How does it fit in with the rest of the Resolink Supply Intel product?
The capacity module, as we had discussed earlier, is a key component to our supply chain risk management solution. It seamlessly fits in and sits right next to supply chain risk management and business continuity. The same platform, the same database is used to collect customer and supplier information.
Is the capacity management information for a supplier shared across multiple customers?
It is not. Because capacity is, again, contractually defined between customers and suppliers, and so capacity information collected for one customer is not shared with others.
Does Resolink have a mobile app?
This is something that we are actively working on, and it is something that we will be releasing in the next few months.
How do you get suppliers to agree to supply such information?
So this is getting suppliers to agree to share information in general is an ongoing process. What we typically recommend to customers is that they start with supply chain risk management, get the supplier's confidence built up, collect data, build up the database, and then gradually expand collecting more information from them.
And how do you collect multi-tier supplier information?
Multi-tier supplier information is something that our system inherently supports. This is, by the way, something that our tool supports for supply chain risk management. What we do is we first, of course, collect the Tier 1 information. Then the customers go assess the Tier 1 information, understand the risk there. While we are collecting Tier 1 information, we are also asking suppliers to provide information about their suppliers. This starts building a profile for the customer on what the risks are beyond Tier 1, and then the customer gets to prioritize what Tier 2, Tier 3 suppliers that are most critical to them, and then Resolink takes the next step, goes to those suppliers to collect information.
Okay. Does Resolink have a big supplier database already? Do customers need to provide the information on their suppliers?
Resolink actually has a very large supplier database in place already. Customers, yes, they still do need to provide some information about their suppliers, especially contact information. As you are probably aware, when you are working with large supplier corporations, you could have a different representative working with each one of their customers, and hence it is actually important to get to the right contact because we do not share supplier data with a customer until the supplier approves the sharing.
Okay. Here's another one coming in. How does this work with a dual or multiple sources for the same product?
So the way it works is if a part is multi-source or dual source, we will go, first thing is we will collect split information from you, so how much of each part is being used by you. Then we will go to both of those suppliers, or all of those suppliers, collect the same capacity risk information from all of them, and then the early warning system that is provided takes into account the split, the capacity at those suppliers, and hence the demand that those suppliers would see to create the warning system.
Okay. Will Resolink have early warning on supply chain disruptions on part-level impact analysis?
Correct. So this is actually the core of the offering. Part level capacity and demand are what we collect, and that is the key trigger for us to generate the notifications.
Okay. Sumit, your current data acquisition does not include quantity. How do you gauge supply versus demand if you don't have demand per part because you don't collect the BOM quantities?
Capacity risk, our module is a new introduction to our solution, and this does introduce some additional data that we collect, which includes information about a supply, the forecast information that we had discussed earlier.
Okay. Any comments on how this may or may not work for perishable goods? How would you modify the system for perishable goods? Any thoughts on that?
This is an interesting one. I need to think about this a little bit because perishables have obviously got a whole different set of challenges with them. This is very much falling into the category of the fast-moving goods scenario, right? So here we're probably starting to look at the forecast that's coming in from the customer needs to be on a more frequent basis, obviously. Now, on the supplier side, perishable goods, by the way, is not my area of expertise, but I would venture to guess that the capacity doesn't change wildly. So even if we were to go refresh the data on a monthly basis from a supplier, we may be still able to get actionable information.
Okay, we're down to a few more questions in the queue. So if you have any more questions, please go ahead and submit them. If you have any follow-up questions, we'd be glad to take those as well.
I can answer that.
Okay. Here's one final question. If you can't see total supplier available capacity, how do you effectively plan? Just looking at an allocated capacity the supplier promises to have available. I'm not sure how much this can help in a disaster. Would a customer have to pay or compensate the supplier to hold certain capacity open for their use in an emergency? Did you get that?
Yep. So the first part of the question was about how can you effectively plan if you're just looking at allocated capacity to you. So the survey that we have created is actually more extensive than collecting just what's allocated to you. We actually try and get information from the supplier about what the total plant capacity is, how much of it has been allocated to you versus how much of it is free/idle. So there is much more information there that makes it really more relevant and provides enough information to be workable in a disaster. Now, the second part of the question is, does a customer have to pay or compensate the supplier to hold certain capacity open for their use in an emergency? Now, this really comes down to a contract negotiation between you and your supplier, right? The arrangement that you have with your supplier to hold capacity in case of an emergency really comes down to a business discussion between the two. From personal experience, I will say that we do have some customers who have set up an arrangement with their suppliers to reserve a capacity for them in some form or the other should a disruption happen.
Okay. This is a new product, but I'll ask this question anyway. What's the average implementation cycle for this solution? So what do we expect, Sumit, for that to be the case there?
Based on historical, based on our experience with other modules, I would say that you're looking at between 4 to 8 months to collect the data. Now, let's be clear on what implementation means, right? Implementation has multiple parts. One is, of course, deploying the software so customers can access it, start putting their data in. That part, getting the software and the platform set up for customer use actually has a very short lead time, maybe a couple of weeks. Getting the right data from the customer to be inputted in the system, we have seen it takes customers anywhere from between 2 weeks to 1 to 2 months. Getting the data from the suppliers into the system is a slightly longer term process, and that's where you get to the 4 to 8 month cycle. So considering all of that put together, you're looking at about roughly 4 months before you start, 3 to 4 months before you start seeing data come in, and about 8 months or so where you have a very robust built-out system.
Okay, that was actually the last question. So I want to thank the audience for your active engagement. Lots of interesting questions. If you have any more questions for us, you know where to find us. There's some contact information on the slide you're still looking at. I did want to call special attention to the last point on the next step slide. We're actually hosting the Global Supply Chain Resiliency Council on February 25th. This is a new forum and a new event, and we'd love to meet those of you who are in the Bay Area at that event. You can go register for the event by going to our event page, and you'll see an indication of the actual banner for linking through to our registration page. So I'd love to see you at the event, continue the conversation. But at this time, I'd like to turn it back over to Barry for his final remarks.
Okay, thanks, Wayne. Thanks, Wayne, and Sumit. Good information. Again, reminding folks that we will have an archived version of the conference on our Supply and Demand Chain Executive website tomorrow at www.sdcexec.com. And now I'd like to take this opportunity to once again thank our sponsor, Resolink, and our presenters, Sumit Vakil of Resolink and Wayne Kakamo. And I'd especially like to thank all of you for attending. And this concludes our conference. Goodbye.